Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you so much for joining the AI Qonfluence event 2025. I hope you guys are enjoying the event so far. And for the next session, we are diving into the generative AI panel discussion on agentic AI this year. And this year for the panel, we have Santosh Ladala, who is AVP of Data and AI at CNA. We have Dr. Tagnachu Biru, or we like to call him as Dan. He's the Global Head of Research and Development in Quantiphi. And we have Arunima Gautam, who is our Global Head of FSI, GTM, and Products at Quantiphi. And I myself, Vishal, I'm the host. I'm a Principal Architect for R&D at Quantiphi. And I would request each of the panel members to give a very brief introduction about themselves. And Santosh, would you mind starting out?
Sure. As Vishal said, I'm AVP of Data and AI here at CNA. Been leading AI and Gen AI delivery for the last few years here at CNA. Excited to be here. Excited to be part of this discussion.
Thank you. Dan, would you like to go next?
Thanks for the quick introduction, Vishal. I am the Global Head of R&D for Quantiphi. I joined Quantiphi in 2022. We conduct forward-looking research in the area of agentic systems, large language models, responsible AI, digital twins, life sciences, and quantum computing. Our team is a globally distributed team, and the team is able to publish a lot of papers in scientific forums as well. Prior to that, I was working for Philips and Signify, leading a center of excellence on AI. Thanks. Back to you.
All right. We'll then have Arunima. Would you like to go next? Thanks.
Thank you, Vishal, for kicking us off. Santosh, Dan, it's an absolute pleasure to be on this panel with you. My name is Arunima Gautam. I am the go-to-market and products leader here at Quantify, working with the financial services and insurance business unit. Started my career as a data scientist, spent almost a decade with Quantify by now. In this journey, we have solved multiple AI and now agentic AI problems for our customers, and I'm excited to be here in this conversation.
All right. Thank you, each and everyone, for your quick introduction and also mostly for your time for this panel discussion. So without further ado, I will just kickstart the discussion. So we'll start with the broader topic of the session today, which is agentic AI and multi-agentic AI. So Dan, I'd like to start with you. If that's okay. Can you please help demystify what agentic and multi-agentic AI is? We keep hearing a lot of these buzzwords like agentic AI, multi-agentic systems, collaborative agents, etc. So how do they all fit together, and how do you explain this to someone who's maybe just starting out in this field of AI?
Yeah, thanks for the good question, Vishal. It's good to start with that. So multi-agentic system, maybe if we start to define it, the simple explanation for a multi-agentic system is how humans operate in a very simple way. Each person specializes in their own skills, goals, and responsibilities to solve problems in a collaborative way. Just to be specific, imagine you have high complex tasks such as product launch. You will have a person for planning, you will have a person for engineering, marketing, researching, etc. Instead of just asking one person to do all of it, which is not possible, which is very hard, then you usually assemble a team of experts to solve that problems. And that is what multi-agentic system is, except that they are AI agents. So each agent is an autonomous agent that has its goals. It has well-defined tasks, often in the background, leverages large language models as a reasoning engine. Each agent has a role like a planner agent, a research agent, a critic agent, etc. It has access to tools such as a web-based API. It could be a code generator, it could be a calculator, it could be a database. And these agents also need to communicate with each other to solve problems in a collaborative way, dividing the complex tasks into smaller pieces. And then the final solution, of course, emerges from this collaborative effort. So, in a nutshell, instead of one big, giant, monolithic model or agent solving one problem, the problem gets distilled down to smaller agents that specialize in certain areas, but they collaborate to solve problems. Hopefully, this is kind of a lighter explanation for what multi-agent system is. Instead, in terms of the other part of your question on collaboration, agentic systems, etc., these are really all interrelated systems with some smaller flavors between them. An agentic system has tools, as explained earlier, tools and intelligence, etc. But a single agent can be an agentic system. A multiple agent can also be, as a whole, an agentic system. When we go to multiple agents, they have multiple agents in the end, and that's what calls it what's called multi-agentic system. Collaboration or collaborative agents is nothing but just signifies the collaboration aspect of this agents to solve problems. Hopefully, I provided an easy explanation for what you're asking, Vishal.
Yeah, that's a very succinct summary. Thanks for that, Dan. So, building on top of that foundation, just curious if we're seeing any real life use cases or problems where these multi-agentic systems are currently in action, or are these too complex and untested at this point and are just confined to research labs at this point? Arinima, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Sure. Multi-agentic systems are the latest innovation in AI, and they are definitely not a hypothesis anymore. They are out of the labs. The scale at which they are implemented within the customers that we are working with is absolutely variable. There are certain customers that are starting off with building the right foundations for multi-agent systems and then handing this foundation to their business teams to build a collection of specialized agents that can do certain tasks for them, thus enabling operational efficiency, thus enabling an uptick in the way the company does their business. Other customers have thought about ideas where they want to experiment with multi-agent systems, and they are starting off with building smaller agents that do specialized tasks and then combining or orchestrating all of them through a mass system. And then there is a third category of customers where they are the evolving market of orchestration tools, like things that we see happening with, say, Google agent space. They are adopting those orchestration layers upfront so that as the company builds upon agents specialized working together, they are able to take benefit of bringing all these specializations together and driving something meaningful. Yes, there is a fourth category of customers where they have not started on their journey, and our recommendation to them has been early adoption is going to make a change in your universe for sure. But multi-agent systems are very well not just a hypothesis that are residing within the R&D groups. Companies have started to experiment with them. Some companies are further ahead than the others in the journey. And definitely everybody is taking this entire advancement in AI very seriously, trying to understand what impact can this new tech make within their ecosystem.
All right, thanks for the note, Arinima. So obviously, different companies are at a different stage, and it's fair and understandable. So maybe Santosh, if you could share some insights on this from a CNA perspective, at what stage do you think agentic AI and multi-agentic system is at? Right? Is it more at an early adoption phase, or how are you looking at it in a broader way?
So at CNA, we've been exploring, I should say, experimenting for a while now. It's been more than a year and a half. We at CNA we take a pragmatic approach, right? There's always hype and there's always reality, and we try to balance those out, which is hype. But we came to realize after 6 months to a year that this is not hype anymore. This is real, and it's gonna fundamentally change, the business processes, enable automation, change how we do work, change IT, and I think we realize that. Um, that doesn't mean that we go full bang and let's do complete strategy of how do we look at rewriting everything, but we do a governed, pragmatic approach of we've been looking at a few POCs, pilots, which mature to pilots. And while keeping an eye on the strategy, it's not like we do not have a strategy, we do have an eye on strategy, but methodically get there. That's the approach we've been taking at CNA, and I think this approach, we feel that it's set up for success.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Santosh. This is really valuable. And uh, I mean, once we get a fair understanding of the potential, obviously the next step is to get started and see how it could fit into your business. So maybe this question is for you, Dan. For a specific given problem, how do you decide like whether to go with a single agentic solution or a multi-agentic solution, or if a agentic AI solution is required in the first place? Do you always start with a single agent and then move towards a multi-agentic solution, or according to you, are there some specific classes of problems that mandatorily need a multi-agentic approach?
Yeah, that's a great question, Vishal. But in the end, it also depends on the problem structure. Um, I would say that if a problem can be solved independently in a sequential manner, then a single agent system might be simpler, faster, and easier to manage. But if the problem is complex, such as requiring multiple distributed knowledge base and skills, kind of too many hats, wearing too many hats, that something that requires some parallelism or maybe conflicting and overlapping goals, or maybe in many cases or in some cases could be physical distribution or high dynamic complexity. So depending on the type of the problem, um, some problems might fit better into a multi-agentic system. So you don't always fit everything into a multi-agentic system. It depends on the problem. In some domains, I think my approach would be, for a given problem, try to architect the solution without thinking about fitting forcefully to a multi-agentic system, but just think about how the solution can be partitioned into building blocks and whether that can benefit from multiple agents or that can be done in a single agent in a sequential manner. And in the end, it's also good to start with just a single agent. See, learn how that agent operates, what are its constraints, what are its challenges, and then move gradually into a multi-agentic system if the problem warrants to do so. That would be
Right.
what I say.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Dan. So maybe Santosh, from a business perspective, like what are you specifically looking for when it comes to like agentic AI adoption? Now, obviously, Dan talked about like starting slow, proof of concepts, and maybe like start with the building blocks and then scale later, etc. Right? So how are
Yeah.
you looking at, and what does it successfully need to demonstrate for you to be confident in scaling it further?
I think the main thing is what outcomes are we getting? It's not about the technology, right? Technology is here to solve a problem. What the business outcomes is it solving, or what's the efficiencies, as Arunima mentioned earlier, that it's going to solve? That's one. Does it, I mean, again, it's not about building an agent. Does it meet the needs of the outcome, right? Does it have the features? What are the quantifiable metrics? For example, what is the ROI look like? What is the efficiency gains look like? And what is the cost of building? So quantifiable metrics, and that's main. We what we have learned as well. What is the risk and compliance and security methodologies also look like as part of the implementation? what we have learned is we don't want to fall behind on some of the security and best practices, and how do we deploy these solutions. And finally, what are the new capabilities it needs to enable? It's not about replicating the existing process. It's not about creating an agency system. What is the user experience does users get with these new solutions or new ways of doing things? So those are all the things that we look at when we build a solution.
Great. Yeah. I mean, having quantifiable metrics and then outcomes properly defined, I think definitely seems to be the best way to go forward. Um, but I do have a question that some of our customers often face, that, even with all of these listed out, there's a big challenge, which is the pace of evolution of AI.
Mm.
That we currently see, right? So by the time you kind of finish like a 12-week exercise to measure these quantifiable outcomes and then do a proof of concept, etc., there might be new and shiny things out there which might further like tempt you to try them out, because on paper the performance and then these quantifiable metrics are much higher than what we've seen in the last, let's say, 12-month or a 16-week POC, right? So how do you get out of this constant POC cycle, endless cycle, and move towards a full scale implementation? Like, what are those decision factors for you?
So I think, as I mentioned earlier, we've been looking at it since more than a year and a half. So uh, we call it POC trap, or and where you keep experimenting, experimenting, and there's exhaustion of what are we going to do, right? So I think we should definitely have a clear, to my point earlier, what is the success criteria of this pilot or initiative? What that needs to be super clear. It cannot be vague as efficiencies or it needs to be very, what are we trying to achieve? And time boxing is super critical, that we have learned. We do need to time box. If it's, I think short time boxing is important. It shouldn't be months. It should be weeks. I think with Gen AI solutions could be weeks if it's done right. um, Having this technology will evolve. I think that's a fundamental truth to it, and we need to be nimble enough to adapt. Not in all instances. Again, if a solution needs an ROI, it doesn't mean that there's a new technology that's released. You go back and revisit the solution. You constantly look at, is it, if it's meeting the ROI, we'll keep that and maybe implement the new technology ways of doing it in the next solution. And the main other thing, as I mentioned, is governance is also comes first. We are at CNA looking at from a governance aspect of it, from a value, from a security. That's definitely need to look at it. So
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the interesting insights, Santosh. I'll come to that governance piece in a little bit, but some of the customers that we've been talking to also, talk about the other issue other than the pace of evolution, and that is the cost and effort, right? Um, you know, it, Unlike traditional solutions where you could do proof of concepts within, maybe like a very few weeks with very few effort, and then make decisions based on that. When it comes to agentic and multi-agentic systems, as you mentioned, like there are multiple decision criteria, multiple building blocks, multiple quantifiable metrics to be defined in the first place. So to do all of this, it could cost a lot in terms of infrastructure as well as time and effort, etc. Right? So a question to you, maybe, Arunima. So I'm guessing organizations might naturally be a little bit indecisive on, coughing up a lot of these huge amounts of time, money, and effort for a POC. So how do we make this process a little bit easier? Any insights on that?
Sure. Thanks for the great question, Vishal. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to balancing your short term gains with your long term goals. Our emphasis as an AI partner to all our customers has been on phased implementations. And this is something that Santosh and Dan touched upon in their sections. Phased implementations become very important. The initial pilot that you do become very important in defining what I'm trying to build. Are there ways to demonstrate tangibly what outcomes it will deliver to my business? Once we cross that hurdle, the next step should be the focus on modularity. Because of a point that you mentioned, that the technology is evolving in weeks and months in the current landscape, modularity gives the power of changing or evolving pieces of your solution such that the end to end system still works. The beauty of a multi agent system, which is our conversation today, is that this end to end system is not driven by just one agent or one type of technology. You could have different types of AIs, you could have different type of agents, different types of predictions, enforced learnings, everything coming together to solve something end to end, and not just solve, in real time evaluate the associated facts and come back and take an action. So modularity of the solution becomes extremely important when you are trying to develop on top of these technologies. ROI is definitely the most important factor for any business, especially with insurance, where reserves have to be very tight for an organization. That is their business to, service a customer at the time of real need. So the type of money that is invested in such initiatives is always controlled. So doing that ROI analysis. But one thing that has changed in this agentic universe, Vishal, is that the focus on competitive advantage. Let me give you an example. If tomorrow an airline announces that I have, the best satellite internet, and you can make use of an agent to modify your tickets while you're in the air for your next step of your journey and aspects like that, I as a customer will jump to, that kind of deal, because I know I'm almost in the air most of the time in a year, right? So I think that competitive advantage of going to the market saying that your system is backed by a multi-agent system gives you that early start in terms of initiating this technology within your ecosystem. And then in long term, this technology, because agents are learning on the fly, they are bringing in information, modifying, they can modify their actions basis what they are learning. I think few years down the line, and this is a very personal opinion, I feel carriers out there will have their own specialized agents that will be talking to other specialized agents within other carriers. So understanding that I have to make use of, emphasize on phased implementation, I have to keep my solution modular, I have to focus on ROI, but early adaptation will mean a lot in the long run for especially carriers and brokers, because this is an industry where I personally feel mass systems will make the maximum leap, because at the end of the day, these businesses are controlled by regulations, by governments, and all other activities. So your AI is not going AWOL. Your AI agent is not thinking about everything under the sky, but it has a controlled gamut in which it is operating basis the things that it is observing. Yes, customer scenarios could change, but making an intelligent decision that for ABC, I need to make X action, that trust and confidence in the AI is needed. You need to build those foundational layers to monitor what activities your agents are taking, why they are taking it. But the cost of delivering such advancements within your ecosystem can definitely be streamlined, phased, with a mindset that there is a need for early adoption, because very soon companies that are out in the market saying, we are backed by AI agents, customers, especially the ones that are digitally savvy, will quickly want to pivot.
Yeah, thanks for the detailed note, Arunima. Yeah, well-defined ROI and early adoption seems to be like a recurring theme, even from Santosh as well. But you did also touch upon a very important concept, which is more like a phased implementation. Now, obviously, this would mean starting slow and then scaling as we go, just like how Dan touched upon during his response as well. So coming back to you, Santosh, I mean, I know you talked about governance earlier, but I'm guessing, as we all understand, scaling is always hard. So you might be facing a few more hurdles than just governance, right? So according to you, what are some of the biggest hurdles that, the insurance industry or any other industry, in the other terms, faces while scaling these multi-agentic systems or agentic AI systems?
I
And
think,
what are some best practices that you could probably uh,
yeah,
insist on?
it's a good question. It's a hard question. It, I'm going to try my best. The Arunima talked about modularity, right? So I think it cannot be, uh, though the POC could be more focused solution. You got to think what's the big picture look like, and from an enterprise wide. Again, you don't start enterprise wide. So in my mind, an orchestration, I think agents will be everywhere. The second word everybody talks will be an agent, and especially in the IT world. So having an enterprise view of, or an orchestration, how do these enterprise orchestration or external orchestration happens? That's super critical that enterprises need to define. Um, Today, the technology is great, observability is bad. Again, it's like a and I know when I was young in 1995, when internet came along, um, oh, everybody wanted to build a web app. We didn't have regulations, we didn't have protocols. We just went around and built something, right? It's the same movement now. We don't have observability yet. We don't think the security and regulation is behind, and it's trying to catch up. So I think that, those are the folks enterprises need to focus on them as things are evolving. The regulation is a different thing, but at least the security aspect of it. Um, the scalability and the performance, I think having a provider and platforms are super critical. I think every there's releases every other week. OpenAI released something today for Agent Builder. Google has something going on. So I think picking a provider and sticking a technology stack which is scalable is super important. Um, I think the other main thing is integration capabilities. I feel this area is, I know there's MCP and people can connect, but how much secure is it? Does it have prompt injection? How you avoid that? How do we avoid somebody hacking from an external to internal? So those things are needs to be figured out from us. How do we scale this to an enterprise wide? There's going to be little growing pains, and didn't mean to be negative about it, but there's going to be growing pains from an enterprise standpoint as these technologies evolve, as these regulations and rules evolve across the country and the world.
Yeah, thank you, Santosh. This is very valuable insights. Slightly digressing, you don't have to say when I was young, because I, for one, definitely feel you're still young. Uh, going back to that, response on governance. Again, as you've talked about at an enterprise scale, and with these multi-agentic systems becoming more and more complex and more capable, we could see that their autonomous nature is
Mhm.
also kind of increasing, right? So again, from an insurance domain, like, which is a kind of like a sensitive domain perspective, or otherwise, like, how do you balance the value add, the acceleration and the automation on one side, with the accountability and governance attacks that you need to deal with, right? And especially in collaborative agents space, where a decision is taken or helped by multiple agents contributing to it, then how do you just take it? How do you explain it? How do you create a trail that will satisfy both your internal regulations as well as external that are mandated?
I think we still need human in the loop. I feel. I mean, for most of the use cases, at least what we are looking at, um, the humans validating and having a defined a methodology of how do we test cross-agent integration testing, external testing is super, super critical. I also mentioned about enhancing some of the observability of what's happening within the agent itself, and why the explainability, right? These LLMs are probabilistic. They're not deterministic. So what are those? How do we make them more deterministic in a way? It's still not. It's still having creativity, right? So I think that's a fine balance to have. That's what we have been learning as well. And having a complete life cycle governance is important as these agents evolve, as enterprises and applications evolve, having hundreds of agents going forward.
Yeah, that's fair. This is super helpful. Thanks, Santosh. Over to you, Dan. Santosh just mentioned about again some of the key factors like observability, evaluation, automation, and then you also talked about like being probabilistic and LLMs being like non-deterministic, etc. So, from a research and development perspective, is there anything we can make this whole scaling problem a little bit easier, especially considering the huge costs and privacy concerns and latency and other issues that come into the mix?
Absolutely, Michelle. Santosh mentioned a few of those indirectly. Um, Obviously, scaling agentic AI systems can be very challenging today. We are learning, things are improving, but it can be very challenging to have fully fledged AI agentic systems that satisfy the job and the ROI that Santosh mentioned about. Um, and some of the challenges can be solved through some mechanisms. Just to mention a few, um, agentic systems can benefit a lot from small models. We do believe that they can benefit a lot from small models. And not every task should be channeled through API to big models such as GPT-5 that cost us more, and of course latency, etc. So consider building specific distilled or fine-tuned or lightweight models first for some tasks and distribute the task accordingly. Also, of course, hybrid inference, some on-premise and some on the cloud. The other important piece is optimal routing, which is for the given task, which model should be asked to solve that problem. And that's a key component of multi-agentic systems, having a very smart, small router in the whole solution space. Now, also, I think a related concept is architecture of the solution architecture. How do we architect such a solution? Is it hierarchical? Is it a single agent? Is it a hierarchical agentic system, or a fully distributed system? Or is it hybrid architecture? Look at the various flavors of this. We do believe that hybrid architecture is the way to go from research perspective. That can minimize cost and latency, but look at the architecture as well. And then from the practical implementation perspective, there are caches and memory sharing, etc. Not every agent should not start from scratch or find out the data that another agent found out. They need to share information. They need to cache so that they don't have to make those big API calls all the time. In terms of the privacy responsive AI aspects that Santosh also mentioned about, there are also emerging research topics such as federated learning, where each agent can operate on its own data, but share a part of it in some ways or fashion to the rest of the agents in a way that's privacy preserving. Some also could include additional modules and checks and balances in each of the agents to make sure that those agents are operating according to the organizational policy, be it a privacy or security policy. And I think in the end, we need to have agent evals in each organization. Agent evals will play a crucial role that will test each agent for the particular matrices. It could be just a business metrics, which is maybe ROI or other things, but also technical matrices in terms of latency, in terms of cost, or even responsible AI type of aspects need to be measured. So agent evals become also a very crucial portion of orchestrating and scaling agentic systems in the end.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This is helpful. I think we've already seen some of these concepts in the session so far today. But really, when you look at the bigger picture, it looks like there are a lot of components involved, right? Like architectures, evaluations, and a lot of expertise required, because I don't think it's humanly possible for someone to understand all of these things and then apply successfully. So this leads to my next question, that in order to build these systems and scale them and then successfully deploy them, you need obviously a lot of human effort, and on top of this you also need someone to be compliant with all the regulations and the internal and external governance mechanisms, and a lot of domain understanding and business knowledge when it comes to, let's say, sensitive domains like insurance and FSI, right? So this question's for you, Arunima. Given the context that we've discussed so far, and given how the technology is continuously evolving at a very rapid pace, how is the global talent responding to this, right? And from an FSI perspective, like, how are customers like looking at talent market in your perspective?
That's a great question, Vishal, and something that we are asked on a daily basis. The word of the day is crossover, and I'll come to this word at the end of what I have to say right now. But Dan touched on a very important point about role of evals in this evolving technology landscape. Today, we are designing agentic systems that have human in the loop engagement. In the old world, we were designing human in the loop systems that had AI interfaces, but that world is flipping now. Now we are designing agentic systems with human in the loop involvement. As we design these systems, some roles are becoming extremely key, like the evals role. Evals will focus on seeing, is my they are the dynamic nervous system of any agentic implementation. When my agent is going analyzing something and making a complex decision, are they doing the right thing? How do I ground the actions that the agent could potentially take in an alternate universe where 10 of my parameters could have changed? So evals play a very important role, and this eval pod that we create is majorly comprised with people from the business side, because they know the business nuances, they know what are the complexities, what are the deviations that can happen in multiple scenarios. We of course complement it with creating digital twins where you are simulating scenarios and looking at what are the actions the agent would take. Now, beyond this eval community, the community that really builds up the foundation, we are seeing a lot of shift towards agentic software developers, which is where which is a little different from our old AI implementations, where a huge portion of your cohort used to be MLEs and platform engineers, MLOps, and those roles. Now I think application building, because the first thing that ChatGPT taught us was that an AI can sit behind a chat screen and it can solve all of your questions in a day, right? Now we are living in that world. So this agentic software development community is becoming very important in mass implementation, especially. Then we of course have ML architects, who are agentic architects, who are designing how the system behaves, what are appropriate modularities, things that we can switch, aspects like that, and your engineers. Now, I gave you a word crossover at the beginning. The question to ask and the observation we have in the market is that a lot of business people are now learning how to prompt an AI, and a lot of MLEs are now learning how does the business work. That's the crossover where we are at. Skills are mixing, They are trying to learn each other's universe, because the capability or outcome of an AI is driven by how well can you prompt the foundation, make it think in a certain direction, and ground the outputs being observed. So this crossover is a very interesting observation in the market right now, and it's equally exciting at this time because the line between IT and business is blurring. Skills are now mixing. Certain people are good at something, they are good teachers. If you are a great teacher, you're going to be a great prompter because you know that you have to be specific with the AI, you have to give it some specific instructions on how to handle an activity and let it do its job, right? So roles are evolving. The pods that are deploying these in production, the weightage of certain roles, it's deviating more towards application and architecture than having just engineers. And last but not the least, we are observing a lot of crossover between business and IT in building agentic systems at scale.
Thank you. And this is super helpful, and I'm sure this is like very insightful for a lot of organizations. So far, we've seen pretty interesting views from all the three panel members, and this brings us to the last part of our discussion, where we mostly look at predictions, hopes, and hope nots, right? So I just have a couple of questions for each of you. Maybe I'll start with you, Santosh. From an insurance perspective, what is the one thing that you hope becomes easier or more standardized for organizations to successfully deploy these systems and adopt into their businesses?
You use the word standardized, and that's what insurance is. Hope the regulations and catch up to, and we, as insurance, I mean, overall industry come with some standards and governance frameworks so that we could do things consistently. I mean, build it, not just internal facing agents, external facing agents, and reimagine our pricing, reimagine our claims processing. um, that's one thing I would hope for sooner, for at least from an insurance standpoint.
I'm sure a lot of these things to be transformed, so there definitely is like a need for standardization. Maybe a question for you, Arunima, what is the one trend that you're watching out for that you believe might redefine the business adoption when it comes to agentic AI, maybe in the next 12 to 18 months?
I think that in the next 2 years, the evolution we will see in the market will be very similar to the evolution of self-driving cars. We started off three layers. We started first with cars that were telling you the direction to go in, keeping you between lanes. You were still in control of things, right? That is the world we have lived already with AI. The next step was automated driving, where there is an AI that is driving for you, you're just monitoring its activity. That's where we are leading up to. So hopefully in the next 2 years, organizations are in a state where, in the right regulations and security protocols, and with the right observability, there are agentic systems running maybe in silos within the enterprise, doing multiple specialized activities, some for claims, some for underwriting, aspects like that. And the third evolution of driving cars, where now you get driverless cars when you book a taxi, and it takes you to your destination, tells you everything. That's probably 3 to 4 years down the line in this journey. And I hope in the next 3 years, organizations are able to move to a state where AI agents can perform a lot of these functions. The advantages being, there'll be immense speed. We will probably not even be talking about the time it takes to quote corresponding to a certain submission, right? Because it's all going to become real time. Yes, things will change after a quick quote is released, but I hope to see a world where the AI agents implementation in financial services and insurance is like where we are with self-driving cars, where you don't really need a driver, but there is enough automation to observe actions, to continuously make sure there are no biases. There is enough understanding of security protocols, compliance, and systems are running, thus making customers across the globe happy. So our trust in businesses will just elevate in the next 3 years if we are able to follow that journey. And I'm really excited and looking forward to it. And we are also seeing that trend in the market. We are seeing executives thinking about it from that lens. Do I really want to make an AI that is as good as what I do today? Or can AI help me do something much better than what I do today? Right. So that's where I think the world is moving. A lot of interesting ideas, and natural language processing has just given a lot of wings to these ideas, and we are really excited about what we are seeing in the market.
Yeah, thank you. Helpful perspective and a very interesting analogy about self-driving cars. Thanks for that, Arunima. So maybe question for you, Dan. Summarizing all of this, 10 years ago, we weren't talking much about AI. Let's say 5 years ago, we weren't talking about generative AI, and 2 years ago, there was no agentic AI. But now we're all talking about multi-agentic AI, which is more like a culmination of all of these things. So maybe even 2 to 5 years from now, where do you think this field will be? And for multi-agentic AI, for example, like how do you think this is going to fare out? Like, is this going to be like pretty common, or like do you have any other predictions that might impact industry and consumer?
Absolutely. That's something I want to talk about because it's my passion.
Okay.
Talking about 5 years in the future. Um, so, I mean, I'm absolutely right now, as all of you have already spoken about, agent systems and multi-agent systems are here to stay. But their performance, cost, and ROI need to improve. Arunima mentioned about the self-driving car for insurance. Yeah, those kind of solutions will definitely happen, but whether it can be fully self-standing versus human in the loop is, I think, some of the questions. Um, but in the end, the core engine, what's behind all of this, the AI engine, the LLMs, need to improve a bit. Currently, still, these LLMs make mistakes. Even the largest one make mistakes, and we're starting to believe them, trust them. Sometimes we don't know they made mistakes, and this can be a problem, but they will improve definitely 5 years from now. I would assume that these LLMs have less errors, but also solving much more bigger problems that are very important for society, be it understanding nature, productivity, improving our productivity, building digital mirrors of the world, or just the physical world. While the AI models are going to improve and also come to close to superintelligence, agentic systems, which is a multi-agentic system that has tools and data and other actions, are also going to continue to evolve. And I would hope that 5 years from now, we have much more independent distributed agents that work like humans do, but maybe potentially also better than humans in many cases, much more cost effective, much more accurate, and help solve our problems and humanity's problems in general. In order to achieve this, I do believe that there will be emerging um, self-learning systems, which is learning from experience, just like we do. These agentic systems need to learn from their own experience by putting something and learning back from their actions or user feedback. This is a very critical component of progress. In addition to that, smaller models will I do believe will be the driving force, and therefore we need to invest more, I would say, more attention to how we can make them smarter, better at handling the tasks that they're able to solve. So these are maybe just a few things to mention, but in general, it's going to evolve things will become much more um, intelligent, less error, and yeah, we will have a different world.
Right. Thanks for that broader view, Dan. So far, we've looked at some of the predictions and what you guys are hopeful about. So I'll probably end the discussion with one final question on what you guys are not very hopeful about, right? Like maybe one thing that you're silently dreading about, or probably something that you would want to highlight.
Yeah, I think one thing that's in my view challenging is that we're trusting LLMs, and we're beginning to put a lot of trust, as I mentioned earlier, but they also make mistakes. So I would hope that we will know when they make mistakes, as well as people also know how to use LLMs uh, properly and aid their productivity in the end. That's what I would hope.
I think there are two things that I am dreading. One is more environmental, and the other is more technical. With everybody joining the AI agentic mass bandwagon, there is a lot of compute power needed. And that requires the current infrastructure that is available to scale. But our earth is only so much. So, where will that infrastructure scale? Is a dread that I have. I hope it does not happen at the cost of people's living conditions, um, because I am very confident all organizations in the next 1 year will have some version of agents running within their ecosystem, and they will be backed by underlying other AI, huge processings, etc. The other fear that I have is from an end-to-end adoption standpoint. Insurance especially has been around for years now, right? Some of these companies are 100 years old. Insurance as a concept has been a part of humankind, as a part of our community that we have created for our survival and for the moments of truth that we can have in our life. A lot of organizations today are struggling with monolithic systems that have become a black box for them. Actually, not just insurance, even in banks, especially with smaller banks, we see that they have their core systems where the customer themselves do not have access to the data that their business is creating. Across the board, wherever this gap exists, that the customer ecosystem is still operating on a legacy application where it's getting extremely hard to do any integrations or for them to understand patterns in their own data to start building the foundations and elevate it to agentic implementations. Those companies that were saving money because on technology because they wanted to keep that money on the reserving side, and keep digital transformation lower, may struggle in the coming years because others who took the time, energy, and money to modernize their baseline systems will have a much bigger advantage in the world to come. So this changing world may pose challenge to a lot of organizations, especially smaller ones who are on a stiff application that is not flexible enough or is not communicating in terms of integrations. So two dreads or fears that I have, and on that note, I'll pass it back to you.
Dreading about the planet and the organizations who haven't looked at early adoption.
It looks like we're gonna have all the data centers in the space now. I was reading seriously. I was reading an article from Jeff Bezos the other day. They are planning on having, because sun is energy. I mean, why not? You don't, and you can have, you don't need any cooling. It's space, so why not have it in the space? All the data centers. That would be interesting to solve the environmental problem.
Yeah,
Um,
Elon Musk will send servers to Mars instead of
yeah,
people.
I will send it to Mars. Yeah, yeah,
No, but
exactly.
plus one on the energy infrastructure there, because I mean, at least even in my team, like we've been looking at the energy needs and how you would optimize for, because there's only finite amount of electricity that you could use and consume within the world. And right now, billions of Google queries, when they shifted from just query magic to now have multi-agentic AI responses coming out for each and every Google search, right? So even as simple as a Google query now consumes a lot more electricity than it used to be. So it's pretty
We
interesting.
we
So it's
need more hardware as well. A lot of
Yeah.
chips needed, a lot of GPUs needed
yeah,
to do this. I feel it in my professional career. This is the disruption that I see, and the pace of disruption is significant. Um, I think, as I mentioned earlier, some of the regulations, some of the I mean, as Arnima touched on, are the enterprises ready with the ecosystems they have, with the mainframe and legacy? Um, I, I feel this technology is here to stay, here to disrupt. I dread and some of these gaps and deficiencies that needs to be mitigated for the enterprise to adopt. Um, I think one other thing I dread is, what is the future workforce going to look like? Where are my kids? What are they going to do? Right. Um, so if we automate code writing, if we automate, especially in ID, if we automate integration, if we automate workflow management, if you automate data and analytics, what is the future workforce going to look like? It's not, I'm curious of how things going to evolve in the next 10, 15 years, where there's going to be a completely new workforce going to come. And on seriousness, I think there will be fundamental problems you will need to solve, like curing diseases,
yeah.
autism. What are, I think the workforce is going to gravitate toward real problems that needs to be solved, not problems that we see today as problems.
That concludes our discussion, and we're gonna open for questions in just about a minute. Thank you so much.